Hey beautiful, welcome in to Dr. Sarah's Cafe. This is your weekly refill where we take the time to savor the flavor of the week, which I concoct or brew from a unique blend of astrology, tarot cards, oracle cards, some poetry, and a little bit of creative intuition as well. Now, this week I'm really excited because there's not a lot of major aspects or transits going on, and I know September was packed with the, eclipses, and early October was packed with the eclipses. And so we get to start off this new fresh month of November. Happy November. Welcome to the new month with some, a more subtle energies in the sky, in the cosmos, okay? So the flavor of the week is proud inner child. Proud inner child. When you think about what would make the younger version of yourself so proud to be able to witness who you are today, what things come to mind, right? What were your childhood dreams? What aspects of your personality, your lifestyle, do you know and believe that the younger versions of yourself, even if the younger versions were technically adults, just look back on your childhood self, your young adult self, your younger self, whatever age that might be, and what parts of you in your life today make that younger version of you proud? And if it's hard for you to think of something, well, then maybe this week we can tap into the dream, the wishes that are yet unfulfilled, that our inner child still wants, still longs to make happen, to make come true for us, okay? So we're being a little bit nostalgic this week, and it's totally okay. And thinking about the inner child healing that a lot of people focus on, part of that inner child healing comes from making our inner child happy and proud to be like, yes, I'm so glad that this is who I grew up to be, right? So the astrology ingredients that I have used for brewing this flavor began on November 3rd and then November 4th. So just 2 back-to-back days in the week ahead. And the first one is that Mars enters Leo. Now keep in mind, Mars is currently in pre-shadow, so it's going to be retrograding back into Cancer later on in a few weeks. But for now, it's going direct in Leo. It will revisit this same area of life once it goes retrograde in the near future. But Mars in Leo is a distinctly different energy than Mars in Cancer. And so even though it's in pre-shadow and it's going to retrograde back into Cancer at some point, this should give us a little bit of a lift. This should be a little bit of a relief for us in terms of that frustration and the angry tears that we get with Mars and Cancer. Mars being the ruler of Aries, which is fire, means that Mars does relatively well in fire signs. So Leo is a fire sign, just like the home sign of Mars, which is Aries, right? Now, Mars is also the ancient ruler, the traditional ruler of Scorpio as well, which is a water sign, but we can talk about that at a different time. But the Mars in Leo energy is going to feel less frustrated. It's going to feel less frustrated. It's going to feel like it has a little bit more empowerment to itself, a little more bass in its chest, right? And of course, a little bit more bravado, right? Mars and Leo energy, Mars being the assertive planet, the assertive energy, being in a sign that, likes to be seen, that likes to show up and have fun and likes to lead in a lot of ways. And so I have the depiction here of Mars with the sunglasses and the little sideways smirk, because Leo is proud energy. If you think back to the weekly refills I did for Leo season, the sun being in Leo, I talked a lot about pride and authentic pride. So not egotistical pride, but genuine pride that I love who I am. I'm proud of what I've done and what I've accomplished. And I'm not so proud of myself that I have to belittle anyone else or that I have to roughshod anyone else, but simply because of who I am. I am proud of that, right? And so with Mars moving into the sign of Leo, the sign of the pride, right? Even like the lion pride as another analogy for that energy. This can help our inner child with that confidence, right? So if there were some of us whose inner child was maybe timid or afraid or lacked courage in certain areas, or maybe was struggled with self-esteem issues, right? Mars going into this Leo energy can revitalize that sense of confidence and courage, thinking about the heart of the lion for our inner child that might have been afraid or that might have been scared at times to speak up or to fully be seen. And then the other thing we have on the next day is the sun, sun in Scorpio, trine Saturn and Pisces. So the sun is currently in Scorpio. Again, happy birthday to any Scorpios watching. And it's trining Saturn and Pisces. So two water signs. Whenever planets are both in the same element, they're trining each other. So this already means that they're getting along. They're on the same vibe. And that sun energy has a lot to do with our ego and our identity as well, right? Like who we are, who we become. And then in the sign of Scorpio, it is being very empowered, right? I think of Scorpio energy, and I've said this so many times in videos, as the sign that focuses on where is my true power? Where's my authentic power? Where do I give my power away? Where do I exert unnecessary power over someone else, right? So the sun being in that energy is asking us to consider what is our sense of power? What's the source of our power? And remember, Mars now in Leo is the ruler of Scorpio. So the sun is having to answer to Mars in this context. The sun is having to abide by the rules of Mars while it's in its house, as well as Pluto, but that's the modern ruler of Scorpio. And then this trine to Saturn and Pisces, we know I've talked about Saturn and Pisces before. I'll make sure I link to the Saturn retrograde video in the caption below. But Saturn and Pisces is the sort of the godfather or the grandfather of the zodiac, because Pisces is the oldest sign. It is one of the wisest signs because it's at the very end of the zodiac cycle where, things culminate, things come to a conclusion, and rebirth is about to begin. Scorpio is also the energy of rebirth, right? Death and transformation and endings in that sense as well. And then Saturn being the father of time, Saturn being maturity, Saturn being long-term stability and building things towards the future that are really going to last, and they're really solid and stable. And so Saturn is also about authority figures, okay? And so thinking about this trine between these two energies, what I really feel, as the illustration suggests, is that this is going to help us ascend to a higher level of accomplishment or achievement in something in our life. And depending on where this is in your birth chart, I always tell you, check your own birth chart. That'll tell you what area of life this focus might come to play for you. And the Sun, Scorpio, Saturn, Pisces connection here, to me, makes your inner child proud, because it's like, oh, we worked hard and we accomplished something. We made the effort to put one foot in front of the other, to keep climbing, to learn, to go back to school, to study a trade, to rest, to have the difficult conversations, to just learn the life lessons that will contribute to us being the person that we really want to be and doing the things that we really want to do. Okay. And so I feel like the discipline, the stamina, the persistence, the perseverance with the Sun, Scorpio, trine Saturn, Pisces, it could really represent us getting to a place in our lives where we're not just proud in the moment, but it is just a demonstration of something that the younger version of ourselves are so proud of us for sticking with it, so proud of us for getting out of, a toxic situation. Our younger self is just so proud of us for leaving the job that is unfulfilling. Our younger self is so proud of us for, starting a new health habit and sticking with it until we see the positive transformation in our health, right? And so there are so many ways that this can play out, but it is that discipline that comes with Saturn and that focus of the Sun in Scorpio that's going to help infuse the path that we're on with enough stability, longevity, and perseverance that when we look back on it, us now as the younger version of our future selves, it's a little trippy, I know, but stick with me. Us now as the younger version of our future selves is going to be so proud of our future selves. And at the same time, all the younger versions of us in the past, our inner child, is going to really celebrate and feel that sense of pride. Like, yes, I knew we could do it. I knew we could do it. I knew we could accomplish the things that really mattered to us. Okay. So only a few things happening this week, but I think they're significant things. And I feel like they, you know, can give us some a boost, a level of motivation, right? That the past couple of months, especially with eclipse season, might have just felt like really heavy. And so I feel like there's some optimism, definitely some optimism is what I get with this week's transits. Okay. Now for the tarot ingredients, you saw a peek of it when I progressed too far in the slides, is the Six of Cups. Now the interesting thing about the Six of Cups is that it represents the sun in Scorpio. So the astrology is saying sun in Scorpio, but the tarot deck is also saying sun in Scorpio, the Six of Cups. So the cups are water. Scorpio is the water sign. The 5, 6, and 7 of cups are fixed water, which is Scorpio. Scorpio's fixed sign energy. And the Six of Cups, believe it or not, literally represents childhood, literally represents the past, your inner child, the nostalgia, right? And in this deck, it doesn't really show as children necessarily because I'm using the golden black cat tarot deck. I felt this deck for the end of the year. I don't know if it's like winter solstice that's coming up or just like moving into deeper into fall, Scorpio energy, right? Thinking about like the black cats. There's just something about this deck that I wanted to give the Hoodoo Tarot deck a chance to rest for a while. It has served us well over the past few months. And so this is a deck I haven't used as often, but I was drawn to it for this month. Now the Six of Cups, again, representing that childhood nostalgia, the past relationships. It could be past versions of ourselves. I'm really feeling this as part of the flavor of the week where we're being asked to reflect on the past. We're being asked to look back at who we've been, at where we've been, what our roots are, where our roots come from, our hometown, childhood friendships, sibling relationships, dynamics in terms of when we grew up in our households. And even if, regardless of how you feel about your past, the beauty in reflecting on it is to see how far you've come. So even if your childhood was hunky-dory, everything was perfect, the likelihood that you've still evolved and grown past that is very high, right? Especially if you're the kind of person who watches these types of videos. And for others of you, if your past was really traumatic, if you had a very difficult or painful childhood, one of the beauties of being able to look back and reflect on that now is for you to say, wow, I've grown. Wow, I've changed. I've learned so much more about myself, about the world, about my life. And it has, it could really make that younger version of yourself proud, again, that you got out of that toxic home environment or that you persevered despite the difficult pains of your childhood. You still became an adult that was ethical and that had a vision and that had a dream and that accomplished certain things, and that's just still here, that survived. For some of you, it might be enough to make your inner child proud just to know that you're still here, that you're still kicking, that you're still giving it one more day. That can make your inner child so, so proud. And so I'm being called to ask you to revisit a past version of yourself of any age, any past version of yourself that you feel drawn to in this moment, and have that conversation, right? If your younger self were sitting on the couch beside you, what would they ask? What would they want to share? What would you want to ask them? What would you want to tell them? Or you can write a letter to your younger self. You can do like a written letter. You can do an audio note to your younger self. You can look back at old photos and just meditate on that energy, right? And it reminds me of a poem that I wrote. We'll get to the pastry and poetry in a second, but it does remind me of a poem that I wrote where I had this sudden realization that, my younger self is here. Like, she's with me. And I said this in my TED Talk as well. I see all the younger versions of myself like the nesting dolls, right? Or like the Russian dolls where there's me, the full-size doll, and then you open that up and there's a smaller version, and you open that one up and there's a smaller doll, and then you open that one up and there's a small doll inside of that, right? And it can go on and on and on. And so for us, like, how can we acknowledge the fact that we always carry the younger versions of ourselves within us, and that in some ways we always carry the future versions of ourselves within us as well, you know? And so, yeah, I'm feeling just, don't be afraid to open up to that nostalgia this week. Don't be afraid to spend some time with your inner child, right? I remember keeping photos of my younger self as my cell phone background for a while. And I know of people who've like worn pictures of their younger self inside of necklaces, or just keeping it in their wallet or something like that. And then the Oracle card is also a new deck. This deck was a gift. It is the Secrets of the Ancestors, also by Abiola Abrams. So shout out to Abiola Abrams for making 2 amazing decks that we use very often on this channel. But also thank you to the friend who gifted me this deck. And the card that we got for this week is the Monarch and Victorious, and it's the number of 7. And so you see the idea of victorious. Again, usually victory is a source of pride for people. To be victorious in something is a reason to celebrate. And so what have been your victories recently? What have been your victories throughout your life? And which of those victories would really make your inner child smile? Which of those victories would make your inner child proud? And again, it could be small everyday wins, like the victory of still being here, still surviving this often difficult, often cruel life, still being here. Could be a victory for you. For others of you, it could be a victory or a milestone, again, in a health challenge that you've overcome. It could be a victory or a milestone in overcoming some psychological block or psychological damage that you had experienced. And a victory in a writing project or a creative endeavor that you're doing. So many versions of small victories that are unique to you and unique to each of you who watch these. And this is represented by the Chariot card in the traditional tarot deck. And so I'm going to read from the guidebook, just because even though it's associated with the tarot deck, I think Abiola Abrams, I like sometimes her input. I like her perspective on a lot of the cards that she has created and crafted. So she says, for number 7, the Monarch, victorious, take a deep breath and buckle up. You will overcome this challenge. You are loved. Okay, pausing. I feel like for some of us, we need to tell that to our younger selves. We need to say that to our inner child. So some of us might need to imagine, do a visualization, or use a photograph if that helps, where you're speaking directly to a younger version of yourself. And we need in the present to speak back to that version of us and say, you are loved. You are loved. I love you now in the present. Okay. And then Abrams says, you are protected, you are supported, and your hard work is paying off in a big way. Your vision is meeting your drive. Yeah, so I feel like there could be a lot of inner child healing, as well as just a lot of past self-healing, where you in the present, who's more empowered, you in the present, who's more knowledgeable, who's wiser, can look back to that younger version of yourself and speak to them and give them comfort and solace and affirmation and say, you are loved, you are protected. I'm feeling that that's a big one for a lot of us. You are emotionally protected, you are physically protected, you are supported. That's also huge. And your hard work is paying off in a big way. I know I'm interjecting a lot as I read through this book, but it's almost like, just like you in the present moment, if you could speak to your future self and ask, does it pay off? Is it worth it? You know, if I stick to this plan, if I persevere in this direction in my life, is it going to pay off? Where am I in 5 years, having made these decisions? And your future self can comfort you in the moment and say, it totally pays off. It pays off tenfold in ways that you can only imagine now, okay? And so you in the present, You are the future version of your past selves. I know I'm doing a lot of time jumping here, so hopefully you're still with me. If you watch a lot of superhero, fantasy, sci-fi stuff, then you might not struggle as much to follow along. But yeah, you today can provide that comfort and solace to past versions of yourself that, again, are always present. And she continues to say, call your power back to you now and move forward. There is no need to be uncertain. You are on the right path. But your confidence and determination are needed. Take charge. Picture you rolling in a chariot heralded by sphinxes. You are regal. Ancestral memory. The monarch is depicted by Hatshepsut, the Egyptian queen who was crowned king in her own right. When I read this the first time, it did remind me of the Woman King movie. She wore a beard to signify that she was as powerful as any man. There was a failed attempt to erase her from history. Ancestral medicine. It's go time, my child. Can I repeat that? It's go time, my child. If we fail to plan, we plan to fail. For many of your ancestors, planning was a luxury they didn't have. This is your nudge to keep going. Get your strut on. Get your strut on, okay? Strut it out. Again, the tarot correspondence is the Chariot, and the declaration. I love that she includes declarations for all of her oracle cards. She says, I have royalty in my DNA. And you do, my dear. You have royalty in your DNA. There's also something from the tarot that I wanted to read as well. So each tarot deck is different. You might already know that if you read tarot yourself. And so the author of this deck, I think, has some really interesting way, very unique way of describing the cards and speaking to the energy of the cards. So I want to read that as well. Six of Cups. Strengths are pure, genuine, and inoffensive. Opportunities are relive good memories, bring out the inner child, and spend relaxing and peaceful moments. Weaknesses is being too nostalgic. Threats would be being lost in the past without being able to live in the present. And the message overall says, in adulthood, we need to remember how good it is to live without the pressure of current responsibilities. Call your inner child, but control it so you don't get lost in the past. And I wouldn't say control your inner child. I would say temper it. Temper your inner child, right? Coach it. All right. I will have to do the timestamps twice for these since I went back. Now for our pastry and poetry. I'm delighted to share with you one chocolate cheesecake and Gabrielle Union, the melanin, the glow. Okay, Gabrielle Union is one of my favorite celebrities. She's like in my top 5 for me personally. And she's a Scorpio, so happy birthday, Gabrielle Union, although it's a few days after your birthday, October 29th. And so again, some of the features I include in pastry and poetry, I want to highlight, thinkers, thought leaders, writers, poets, artists whose sun sign represents the season that we're currently in. And since I use Western tropical astrology, we're currently in Scorpio season. So Gabrielle Union being a Scorpio, it felt fitting. But also this quote of hers feels fitting for the proud inner child flavor of the week as well. And so Gabrielle Union says in this quote, "You were fly, dope, and amazing from birth. I would tell that girl now. From the second you took your first breath, you were worthwhile and valid. And I'm sorry you had to wait so long to learn that for yourself." Okay, so she's speaking back to her younger self. She's speaking back to her girlhood self and telling her something that she wished she had heard, wish she had understood at some point, right? And so, again, this could be an exercise for us this week as well. If you could speak to your younger self, your younger boy self, your younger girl self, your younger child self, what's a message you would want to give to that tender innocent, sweet, precious version of yourself, right? And so Gabrielle Union's message, I think, applies to many, many people, is letting that younger version know that you were already worthwhile. You were inherently valuable and valid and beautiful and fly and dope from birth, from inception, okay, from conception, in the mind and the imagination of the creator. Can we get really cosmic with it for a second, right? And what was your journey to be able to say that? What was the journey that you took to be able to recognize that for yourself now? And if you're still struggling to recognize that about yourself now, then maybe your inner child can be inspiration for you to continue that journey, to continue that process of realizing you're worthwhile, you're valid, you're fly, you are dope, you are amazing in so many ways. Yeah? And our to-go or takeaway is a question that I want you to ponder a little bit. How will I make my inner child proud this week? So we're not talking about lifelong pride. We're not talking about lifelong achievements and accomplishments. Just for this week, what's one small scope thing that I can accomplish in a week? Just one small thing I can do in a week, do this week, that the younger version of myself would be very, very proud of, and that the future of myself would be very grateful for. Okay, my loves, I hope that this has in some way helped you to refill your spiritual cup. Be sure to watch the Tuesday tarot reading where I unpack this flavor of the week a little bit more with a full-on collective tarot reading. And I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.